The silent cry, the observatory dome of Talvara shimmered under the fading light of their dying sun. High Coordinator. Thesson stood before the massive viewing screen, her silver-scaled hands trembling as she watched the star that had nourished her world for billions of years begin its final dance of death. The readings were unmistakable. Their sun was collapsing inward, its core destabilizing in ways their scientists had never predicted. Within 6 planetary rotations, it would explode in a catastrophic event that would consume everything within 3 light years. Thesson had lived for 200 cycles, long enough to see her people reach for the stars, to establish colonies on distant moons, to master technologies that seemed like magic to their ancestors. But none of that mattered now. The Talvari were a proud species, known throughout their sector for their achievements in mathematics and stellar cartography. They had mapped thousands of star systems, helped dozens of younger civilizations navigate the complexities of space travel. Yet now, when they needed help the most, they found themselves utterly alone. The communication console chimed softly, pulling Thesson from her dark thoughts. Her assistant, young Varen, approached with careful steps. His crest feathers were flattened against his head, a sign of deep distress that he could not hide. High Coordinator. The Galactic Council has responded to our emergency appeal. Thesson felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. She turned quickly, her robe swirling around her tall frame. What did they say? When will the evacuation ships arrive? Varen's eyes, large and golden, could not meet hers. They said our situation is unfortunate, but they cannot spare resources for a full planetary evacuation. They suggested we use our own transport vessels and relocate to our outer colonies. The hope died as quickly as it had been born. Thesson felt her legs weaken, and she reached out to steady herself against the console. Our outer colonies can support maybe 10,000 Talvari at most. There are 8 million of us on this world alone. The young assistant's voice cracked with emotion. I know, High Coordinator. I informed them of this. They said they would keep our plight in their thoughts. Thesson closed her eyes, fighting back the despair that threatened to overwhelm her. The Galactic Council represented 47 advanced civilizations, species with technology that made the Talvari look primitive by comparison. Any one of them could have sent the ships needed to save her people. But they chose not to. The cost was too high, the logistics too complicated, the political will too weak. Over the next rotation, Thesson sent appeals to every spacefaring civilization within communication range. She broadcasted on every frequency, translated her pleas into hundreds of languages, offered everything the Talvari had in exchange for help. The responses came slowly, each one a knife to her heart. The Draxan Empire expressed their sympathies, but explained they were engaged in border disputes and could not divert their fleet. The Crystalline Collective acknowledged the transmission, but stated that their ships were not designed to transport organic life forms. The Void Walkers, ancient beings who had explored the galaxy for millennia, simply did not respond at all. Each rejection carved away another piece of Thesson's soul. She stood in the council chamber, surrounded by the leaders of her people, and watched hope drain from their faces one by one. We have exhausted all diplomatic channels, said Elder Kossuth, his voice heavy with resignation. Perhaps it is time to accept that we will not all survive this. We should focus on saving who we can. The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what he meant. They would have to choose which families would live and which would die, choose which children would see another sunrise and which would perish in nuclear fire. Thesson could not accept it. She would not. There has to be someone, she said, her voice rising with desperate determination. Someone in this vast galaxy who will help us. We cannot give up. But even as she spoke, she felt the weight of reality crushing down upon her. 3 rotations remained. 3 rotations to save 8 million lives with ships that could carry only thousands. Then, on the 4th rotation, something unexpected happened. A transmission arrived on an old frequency, one rarely used anymore because it was considered too slow and primitive for modern communication. The signal was scratchy and distorted, having traveled across vast distances. Viren brought it to Thesson immediately, confusion evident in his expression. High Coordinator, we have received a response to our distress call. It is from a planet called Earth. Thesson searched her memory banks but found little information. A small blue world in a distant spiral arm of the galaxy, home to a species called humans. They had only achieved faster than light travel within the last few decades, and were considered newcomers to the galactic community. What could they possibly offer? Play the message, Thesson ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a bipedal creature with brown skin and dark hair tied back severely. The being wore some kind of uniform with symbols Thesson did not recognize. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Fleet. We received your distress call regarding the imminent stellar collapse threatening your homeworld. Earth may be young in the galactic community, but we understand what it means to face extinction. We are mobilizing every vessel we have. Please transmit your planetary coordinates and population distribution data. We are coming to help." Silence filled the chamber. Thesson replayed the message twice more, certain she had misunderstood. But the words remained the same. These humans, these newcomers whom the older civilizations barely acknowledged, were offering to help. Elder Kossuth spoke first, his voice uncertain. "High Coordinator, with respect, what can they possibly do? According to our database, Earth has perhaps 200 interstellar capable vessels, most of them exploratory or scientific in nature. Even if they sent their entire fleet, it would not be enough." Thesson stared at the frozen image of Admiral Chen, seeing something in those alien eyes that resonated deep within her. Determination. The same fire that had driven the Talvari to reach for the stars centuries ago. "Then we will work with what they can provide," she said firmly. "Send them everything they requested. And send a message of gratitude. Let them know that someone heard us." The human fleet arrived 2 rotations later, emerging from faster-than-light travel in a coordinated formation that spoke of military precision. Thesson watched from the orbital station as the vessels approached. Elder Kossuth had been right. There were approximately 230 ships ranging from massive carriers to small corvettes. Even altogether, they could transport perhaps 50,000 Talvari at most. It was not nearly enough, but it was something, and something was infinitely more than the nothing every other civilization had offered. Admiral Chen requested an immediate meeting. Thesson agreed, and within hours found herself in the station's diplomatic hall facing the human commander. Chen was shorter than Thesson, but carried herself with unmistakable authority. Her dark eyes assessed everything with quick intelligence. 2 other humans flanked her. A man with gray hair and weathered features introduced as Chief Engineer Marcus Webb, and a younger woman with bright red hair named Dr. Keiko Tanaka. Admiral Chen did not waste time with elaborate diplomatic protocols. "Chancellor Thesson, we have reviewed the data you sent regarding your star's collapse. Our astrophysicists confirm your timeline. You have approximately 48 hours before the stellar event begins." Thesson felt her heart sink. "We know, Admiral. We are grateful for your arrival, but we understand the limitations. If you can save even 50,000 of our people, it will be more than anyone else was willing to do." Something like a smile crossed Chen's face, but it was not a happy expression. It was the smile of someone about to attempt something insane. "Chancellor, we did not come here to save 50,000 of your people. We came to save all of them." The statement hung in the air like an impossible promise. Thesson felt dizzy. "All of them? Admiral, that is not possible. You do not have enough ships. Even if every civilization in the galaxy sent their fleets, there would not be time to evacuate 8 million people." Engineer Webb stepped forward, activating a holographic projector. "You are correct that conventional evacuation is impossible, so we are not going to evacuate. We are going to move your planet." The hologram showed Talvara, their beautiful world of silver forests and crystal seas. Then it showed something that defied everything Thesson understood about physics. Massive structures surrounding the planet, generating fields of energy that would literally push their entire world out of the danger zone. "That is impossible," Thesson whispered. "The energy requirements alone would exceed our sun's entire output. You cannot generate that kind of power." Webb's weathered face creased into a grin. "You are right, we cannot. But your sun can. We are going to use the stellar collapse itself to power the planetary displacement. We will position gravitational amplifiers at key points around your sun. When it begins to collapse, we will redirect a fraction of that energy through quantum tunneling arrays directly into the planetary drives. Essentially, we will use your dying sun's final breath to push your world to safety." Dr. Tanaka added, her voice filled with barely contained excitement. "We have been developing this technology theoretically for years, but never had a chance to test it. When we received your distress call, our entire scientific community mobilized. We have run the simulations 10,000 times. It can work. Thesson looked between the three humans, trying to comprehend what they were proposing. You want to use experimental technology, never tested to move an entire planet out of a blast zone using the energy from a collapsing star. And you have 48 hours to build and implement this system? Chen met her eyes steadily. Yes. Thesson felt something between laughter and tears building in her chest. Why would you risk so much for people you do not know? For a species that cannot offer you anything in return? The Galactic Council would not help us. Civilizations 1,000 times more advanced than yours turned away. Why would humans do this? Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of her species' history. 400 years ago, Earth faced a crisis that nearly destroyed us. Climate collapse, resource wars, nuclear exchange. We came within hours of extinction. No one from the stars came to save us. We had to save ourselves, and we barely succeeded. She paused, and Thesson saw old pain in those eyes. We learned something in those dark years, Chancellor. We learned that when you are drowning, anyone who reaches out a hand is a friend. We learned that the measure of a civilization is not in its technology or its power, but in whether it helps those in need when no one else will. Chen gestured to the hologram. We may be young. We may be primitive by galactic standards, but we are here and we have a plan. And we will give everything we have to make it work, because that is what humans do. When everyone else ignores a cry for help, we answer. Thesson felt tears flowing down her face, a rare display of emotion for a Talvari of her station. She did not care. In that moment, looking at these strange beings who had traveled across the stars to attempt the impossible, she felt something she had not felt in days. Hope. Then let us begin, she said, her voice steady despite her tears. Tell us what you need and the Talvari will give everything we have to help you succeed. Webb was already pulling up construction schematics. We will need every able-bodied person you have. We need to build 12 gravitational amplifiers and position them in precise orbits around your sun. We need to construct 6 quantum tunneling arrays on your planet's surface. And we need to do all of this in less than 2 rotations while your sun becomes increasingly unstable. Thesson straightened her spine, drawing on reserves of strength she did not know she possessed. Then we will make it happen. I will mobilize every engineer, every scientist, every worker on this planet. She looked at the 3 humans before her, representatives of a species the galaxy had barely noticed. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you for hearing us when no one else would. Chen nodded once, sharply. Thank you for trusting us with something this important. Now let us get to work. We have a planet to save. When others turn away, the construction began immediately. Thesson watched from the command center as the humans transformed her world into the largest construction site in the sector. They worked with a speed and efficiency that bordered on reckless, but there was method in their apparent madness. Engineer Webb had divided the tasks into parallel streams, with human and Talvari teams working simultaneously on different components. The gravitational amplifiers were massive structures, each one the size of a small city. They needed to be positioned in a precise geometric pattern around the dying sun, close enough to harness its collapsing energy, but far enough to avoid being consumed. The humans had brought prefabricated components, but assembly in the hostile environment near an unstable star required courage that Thesson had rarely witnessed. Human engineers in reinforced suits worked alongside Talvari technicians, welding and connecting systems while radiation levels climbed to dangerous heights. Dr. Tanaka coordinated the quantum tunneling arrays from the surface, her team working through the night cycles without rest. Thesson visited one of the construction sites, a vast plain that had been transformed into a maze of machinery and energy conduits. The young scientist stood at the center of it all, her red hair covered in dust, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, but her voice remained clear and focused as she directed workers in both English and quickly learned. Talvari Chancellor, Dr. Tanaka said when she noticed Thesson approaching. We are ahead of schedule on this array. The Talvari engineers you assigned are exceptional. They adapted to our designs faster than we anticipated. Thesson looked around at her people working side by side with the humans. There was something beautiful in it. 2 species separated by vast distances and different evolutionary paths, united by a common purpose. How long until activation? She asked. 22 hours, Tanaka replied. Then she hesitated, her expression becoming serious. Chancellor, I need to be honest with you. The simulations show an 87% chance of success. That means there is a 13% chance this will not work. If it fails, the energy release could accelerate the stellar collapse. Your world might have even less time than we thought. Thesson had expected this. No plan this audacious could come without risk. And if we do nothing? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Certain death for everyone, Tanaka said quietly. This way, most of your people survive. That is the math. But I wanted you to know the risks. We are betting everything on technology we have never fully tested. The High Coordinator placed her hand on the young scientist's shoulder, a gesture of trust in Talveri culture. Dr. Tanaka, you and your people crossed the stars to help strangers. You are risking your lives on our world when you could be safe at home. Whatever happens, the Talveri will never forget this. Tanaka smiled, and for a moment the exhaustion lifted from her features. Then let us make sure your people are around to remember it, she said. The hours ticked away like drops of water falling into an endless void. Thesson barely slept, monitoring the construction progress from the orbital command center. Admiral Chen was a constant presence, moving between teams, solving problems, making decisions with quick precision. The woman seemed to run on determination alone, and Thesson found herself drawing strength from the human's unwavering focus. With 12 hours remaining, the first crisis struck. One of the gravitational amplifiers near the sun suffered a catastrophic systems failure. The intense radiation had degraded its protective shielding faster than predicted. Engineer Webb delivered the news with characteristic bluntness. We need to repair it, but the radiation levels are lethal. Anyone who goes out there has maybe 10 minutes before exposure becomes fatal, even in our best suits. Thesson felt her heart sink. Can we complete the operation with 11 amplifiers? She asked, though she dreaded the answer. Webb shook his head. No. The geometric pattern requires all 12 for proper energy distribution. Without that amplifier, the whole system collapses. We need to fix it, but I do not see how without sacrificing whoever goes out there. Before anyone could speak, a voice came through the communication channel. This is Lieutenant James Rodriguez. I am already suited up and heading to the repair shuttle. I can make the fixes in 8 minutes if someone walks me through it. Webb's face went pale. Rodriguez, negative. That is a death sentence. You will not survive the radiation exposure. There was a pause, then Rodriguez's voice came back, steady and calm. Sir, with respect, we did not come all this way to fail because of one broken amplifier. I have a daughter back on Earth. I want her to grow up in a galaxy where people help each other. Let me do this. Thesson watched through the monitor as the small shuttle launched, carrying the human volunteer toward the failing amplifier. Chen stood rigid beside her, her jaw clenched tight. Lieutenant Rodriguez was not the only one who had volunteered. 5 other humans had stepped forward immediately, ready to sacrifice themselves. But Rodriguez had been fastest to the shuttle bay. The next 8 minutes were the longest of Thesson's life. Webb guided Rodriguez through the repairs, his voice remarkably steady despite the circumstances. Cut the blue conduit, seal the quantum chamber, reroute power through the secondary grid. Rodriguez worked with practiced efficiency, his hands never hesitating even as the radiation counters climbed into ranges that made Thesson feel sick to watch. Repair complete, Rodriguez finally announced. Systems are nominal. Amplifier 12 is back online. Then his voice changed, becoming softer. Tell my daughter I love her. Tell her this mattered. The shuttle made it back to the fleet ship, but Rodriguez never regained consciousness. Dr. Tanaka and her medical team worked for 3 hours, but the radiation damage was too severe. The lieutenant died as the Talveri sun began its final collapse, his last act ensuring that millions of people he had never met would live. Thesson attended the brief ceremony in the ship's medical bay. She watched as Admiral Chen placed a flag over the body, her face carved from stone, her eyes dry but haunted. Rodriguez had been 28 years old. He had a wife and a 4-year-old daughter back on Earth. He had volunteered knowing he would never see them again. Why? Thesson asked Chen quietly as the other humans filed out. Why would he do this? Chen was silent for a long moment. Because he believed in something bigger than himself, she finally said. Because he understood that the universe is a dark and cold place and the only warmth in it comes from what we bring ourselves. She looked at Thesson. Lieutenant Rodriguez made his choice. Now we have to make sure it counts. With 6 hours remaining before the stellar collapse, all systems were ready. The gravitational amplifiers orbited the dying sun in perfect formation. The quantum tunneling arrays on Talvera's surface hummed with contained energy. Every Talveri on the planet had been briefed on what to expect. The ground would shake, The sky would light up with energy discharges, but they were to remain calm and trust the process. Thesson stood in the command center surrounded by human and Talvari personnel. Engineer Webb monitored the amplifiers. Dr. Tanaka tracked the quantum arrays. Admiral Chen coordinated the fleet, ready to provide support wherever needed. And Thesson herself stood at the center of it all, watching as her sun began its death throes. The stellar collapse started exactly when the human models predicted. The sun's outer layers began falling inward, releasing unimaginable amounts of energy. This was the moment. The gravitational amplifiers activated, their fields reaching out to embrace the dying star. They drank in the energy, channeled it, transformed it, and sent it screaming through quantum tunnels directly to the arrays on Talvara's surface. The planet shuddered. Every Talvari felt it in their bones. The sky above them lit up with aurora of impossible colors as raw stellar energy was converted into directional thrust. The quantum arrays were literally pushing against the fabric of space itself, and space was pushing back. Talvara began to move. Numbers scrolled across Thesson's display. Velocity increasing. Trajectory holding. Energy levels stable, but then alarms began to sound. Dr. Tanaka's voice came through, tight with stress. Array 4 is overloading. The energy throughput is higher than our calculations. If it fails, we lose vector control. The planet will tumble instead of moving in a straight line. How long until it fails? Chen demanded. 90 seconds at current draw, Tanaka replied. Can you reroute the load to other arrays? Webb asked. Not without overloading them too, Tanaka said. The system is already at maximum capacity. We need to reduce energy flow, but if we do that, we will not achieve escape velocity. Thesson watched the calculations racing across her screen. They were trapped between two failures. Keep going and the array would explode, destroying vector control and sending Talvara spinning into space. Reduce power, and they would not move fast enough to escape the blast radius. Either way, her people died. Then Chen spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. What if we use the fleet? Webb looked at her in shock. Admiral? The energy involved would vaporize any ship that got close. Chen nodded, I know. But if we position the fleet between the star and Array 4, we can absorb some of the excess energy. It will not be much, but it might be enough to keep the array stable for the time we need. That will destroy every ship, Thesson said, horrified. Your people will die. All of them. Chen met her eyes. Chancellor, we came here to save 8 million lives. If it costs 230 ships and 3,000 human lives to do that, it is a price we are willing to pay. She turned to her communication officer. Signal the fleet, all ships to position Beta 7. Maximum shielding. Prepare to act as energy sinks. No, Thesson said, her voice breaking. I cannot let you do this. You have already sacrificed so much. Chen's expression softened. Chancellor, this is not your choice to make. My people knew the risks when we volunteered for this mission. Every single human on this fleet would rather die here, helping save your world than return home having failed. This is what humanity does. This is who we are. The fleet moved into position, hundreds of ships forming a wall between the collapsing star and the overloading array. Thesson watched helplessly as the energy wave hit them. Ship after ship lit up on her display, their shields failing, their hulls buckling under forces no vessel was designed to withstand. But they held the line. They absorbed the energy that would have destroyed Array 4, bought the precious seconds needed for the system to stabilize. Array 4 stable, Dr. Tanaka announced, her voice thick with emotion. Planetary velocity achieved. We are clear of the blast radius. The command center erupted in cheers, but Thesson could only stare at her display, watching as the human fleet died protecting her world. Ship after ship went dark. Of the 230 vessels that had arrived to help, only 43 survived. Admiral Chen stood at her station, her face a mask of controlled grief as she read the casualty reports. The stellar collapse reached its peak, and Talvara's sun exploded in a blast that lit up the sector. But the planet was far enough away now, pushed to safety by the sacrifice of people who had owed them nothing. 8 million Talvari watched from their windows as their sun died in glory, and they lived because humans had decided that some things mattered more than survival. In the aftermath, as rescue ships began arriving from across the galaxy, drawn by the unprecedented energy signature, Thesson stood with Admiral Chen on the observation deck. The human looked older now, worn down by loss and responsibility. I am sorry, Thesson said quietly. I am so sorry for what this cost you. Chen shook her head slowly. Do not be. Those people made their choice freely. They died knowing they saved a world. That is not a tragedy, Chancellor. That is purpose. She looked at Thesson. The real tragedy would have been if we had stayed home. If we had ignored your call like everyone else. The Galactic Council finally arrived 3 days later, their massive ships emerging from faster-than-light travel with all the pomp and authority they could muster. They were horrified and amazed in equal measure. Moving an entire planet using stellar collapse energy was theoretically possible, but the Council had deemed it too dangerous to ever attempt. Yet these primitive humans had pulled it off in less than 48 hours. High Coordinator Thesson began Council Speaker Morath, his multiple eyes regarding her with new respect. We must discuss the implications of what has occurred here. The humans have demonstrated capabilities we did not expect from such a young species. Thesson looked at the Council representatives, these leaders of civilizations who had ignored her pleas for help. She thought about Lieutenant Rodriguez dying to repair an amplifier. She thought about 3,000 humans who flew their ships into certain death to protect her people. She thought about Admiral Chen, who had lost so many of her crew but stood tall, unbowed. Speaker Morath, Thesson said, her voice cold and formal. I have nothing to discuss with the Council. When my people faced extinction, you offered thoughts and prayers but no action. The humans came. They risked everything. They succeeded where you said success was impossible. As of this moment, the Talvari withdraw from the Galactic Council. We will instead pursue formal alliance with Earth. The council chamber erupted in protests, but Thesson ignored them. She turned to Chen instead. Admiral, when your repairs are complete and your people are ready, the Talvari would be honored if you would guide us to Earth. We have much to learn from humanity. Chen smiled, a real smile this time, warm and genuine. It would be our honor, Chancellor. Earth will welcome you. As the human fleet prepared for the journey home, Thesson stood at the viewing port of her ship and looked back at Talvara. Her world still spun through space, pushed far from its original orbit but alive, thriving, saved. The cities below glowed with light. Children played in the silver forests. Life continued because humans had decided it should. In the years that followed, the Talvari-Human Alliance became the foundation of a new galactic order. Other species who had been ignored and overlooked by the Council found their voices. They built something different, something better. A coalition based not on power or ancient glory, but on a simple principle that humanity had taught them. When someone asks for help, you answer. The Galactic Council eventually faded into irrelevance, unable to compete with an alliance built on mutual support rather than political posturing. And at the center of it all stood two species. The Talvari, who had learned that survival sometimes comes from unexpected places, and the humans who taught the galaxy that being young does not mean being weak, and that the greatest power comes from simply choosing to care. Admiral Sarah Chen retired after 20 more years of service, decorated by a dozen species for her role in what became known as the Talvara Salvation. She returned to Earth and spent her remaining years teaching at the Solar Academy, training new generations of human officers. Her favorite lesson was always the same: the galaxy is vast and often cruel. She would tell her students, most civilizations will only help you if it benefits them. But humans are different. We help because it is right. We answer the call because someone needs to. That is not weakness. That is our greatest strength. High Coordinator Thesson lived to see her great-grandchildren grow up on a Talvara that thrived in its new solar orbit. She never forgot the humans who died to save her people. Every year on the anniversary of the Talvara Salvation, she would stand at a memorial built in their honor and speak their names aloud. 3,000 humans who could have stayed home safely, but chose instead to fly into the fire for strangers. And throughout the galaxy, when someone sent out a distress call, they ended it with the same phrase. A prayer, a hope, a memory. Everyone ignored us except the humans.